Standing before the eastern walls of Jerusalem rises a structure that has defied the passage of time in an inexplicable manner. The Golden Gate, known in Hebrew as Sha'ar Harachamim, the Gate of Mercy, has remained sealed for 5 centuries. While every other entrance to the Old City has been repaired, rebuilt, or modified over the years, this particular gate has resisted all attempts at alteration. Our investigation began with a seemingly simple question: why has this gate, among all the structures in Jerusalem, remained intact for so long? What we discovered was a story that interweaves archaeology, geopolitics, unexplainable testimonies, and a pattern of events that defies conventional explanations. Part 2. The Ottoman Archives. In the archives of Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, researchers have found recently translated documents that shed new light on Sultan Süleyman the Magnificent's motivations. Contrary to the conventional historical narrative that presents the sealing of the gate as a simple political decision, these records reveal something far more complex. According to Ottoman court chronicles from 1541, Süleyman experienced a series of disturbing dreams. In them, an unidentified figure approached Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, entered through the eastern gate, and transformed the entire city. The records indicate that the Sultan, visibly disturbed, convened an extraordinary meeting. Dr. Mehmet Özkan, a specialist in Ottoman documents from Istanbul University, explained to us, what's unusual about this case is that Süleyman sought advice not only from Islamic scholars, but also from Jewish rabbis and Christian priests. In official records, this is extremely rare. It suggests the Sultan was genuinely unsettled by something that transcended ordinary politics. The 3 religious groups, independently of each other, warned the Sultan about the prophetic weight of this specific gate. All mentioned connections to eschatological events, end times events, in their respective traditions. Süleyman's response was meticulous. He not only ordered the gate sealed with stone and mortar, but implemented a second measure: the construction of a Muslim cemetery directly in front of the entrance. The documents reveal his reasoning: to create a barrier of ritual impurity that would prevent Jewish priests from approaching, and to establish a definitive test. Only someone with power over death itself could cross that threshold. Part 3. The Pattern of Halted Interventions. Throughout our investigation, we identified a notable pattern. Every significant attempt to alter, destroy, or open the Golden Gate has been abruptly interrupted. We documented the most verifiable cases. 1917. The planned demolition. Ottoman Empire records during World War I indicate that on December 9, 1917, Muslim leaders in Jerusalem had obtained authorization to completely demolish the Golden Gate. The structure was viewed as a symbol of superstition that needed to be eliminated. That same day, British forces under the command of General Allenby captured Jerusalem. The demolition was immediately cancelled. British military records confirm that one of Allenby's first orders was to preserve all religious sites, specifically mentioning the Golden Gate. 1948. The explosives that failed. We interviewed Dr. Yitzhak Cohen, a military historian who has extensively studied the 1948 Arab-Israeli conflict. He discovered documents from Jordanian forces planning to fortify the Golden Gate as a defensive position. What's extraordinary, Dr. Cohen explained to us, is that according to multiple testimonies from Jordanian military engineers, every attempt to drill near the gate resulted in equipment failures, drill bits that broke for no apparent reason, explosives that wouldn't detonate. After several days, the commander ordered the site abandoned and fortified another position. 1967. The rabbinic warning. During the Six-Day War, Israel captured the Old City of Jerusalem. We interviewed second-hand testimonies from soldiers who were present when the possibility of opening the Golden Gate as a symbolic gesture was discussed. Rabbi Shlomo Goren, chief rabbi of the Israel Defense Forces at that time, intervened personally. According to multiple sources, he declared, "This gate will remain closed. Only the Messiah has authority to open it." The plans were immediately abandoned. 1993, the shared dreams. This case is particularly difficult to verify, but appears consistently in testimonies from multiple independent sources. During the Oslo peace negotiations, a symbolic ceremony was proposed in which Israeli and Palestinian leaders would together open the Golden Gate as a gesture of reconciliation. According to confidential testimonies we obtained from participants in the negotiations, the night before the planned ceremony, several key leaders, both Israeli and Palestinian, reported having disturbing dreams about the gate. Although details vary, the central message was consistent. Not yet, not by your hands. The ceremony was canceled without official public explanation. When we asked one of the retired negotiators about this event, his response was cryptic. There are things that happen in Jerusalem that have no political or diplomatic explanation. Sometimes wisdom lies in recognizing when not to interfere. Part 4. The 2019 events. During Ramadan 2019, reports began circulating about unusual activity around the Golden Gate. We traveled to Jerusalem to investigate these testimonies directly. The maintenance worker's testimony. We interviewed Ahmad H., who requested we not use his full surname, a maintenance worker for the Islamic Waqf that oversees the Temple Mount. His testimony was consistent and detailed. It was early morning, approximately 4:30 a.m. I was making my regular rounds when I passed near the Golden Gate. I heard voices. At first, I thought they were pilgrims who had entered early, but the voices were coming from inside the sealed gate. They weren't normal conversational voices. They sounded like prayers, but in a language I couldn't identify. I stopped, listened for perhaps 2 minutes, and then the voices simply ceased. Ahmad reported the incident to his supervisors. According to him, they told him not to speak about the matter with anyone else. The security camera failure. The Temple Mount is under constant surveillance by security cameras operated by both Israeli authorities and the Jordanian Waqf. We contacted sources within the security system who confirmed, under condition of anonymity, that during a period of approximately 72 hours in May 2019, the cameras covering specifically the Golden Gate area experienced inexplicable technical failures. What's strange, a source explained to us, is that only the cameras in that specific sector failed. All other cameras on the Temple Mount were functioning perfectly. When technicians checked the equipment, they found no hardware problems. They simply stopped recording and then started working again on their own. The recordings from that critical period do not exist. The photographs of unexplained light. We obtained copies of photographs that circulated among religious circles in Jerusalem during that period. The images, taken by several different individuals from different angles, show what appears to be a flickering light emanating from the cracks of the sealed Golden Gate. We consulted with Dr. Michael Brenner, a specialist in forensic photograph analysis from Hebrew University. His analysis concluded, the images show no obvious signs of digital manipulation. The light that appears has unusual characteristics. It doesn't behave like reflected sunlight, nor like artificial light from known sources. If the photographs are authentic, the source of the light would be a genuine enigma. Multiple photographs taken on different days show the same light anomaly. The official response: silence. We requested official comments from Israeli authorities, the Islamic Waqf, and the Christian custody of the Holy Land. The responses were notably similar. They declined to comment on unverified rumors. What's unusual is that normally any significant activity on the Temple Mount generates immediate official responses, especially given the sensitive political climate of the area. The deliberate silence in this case is in itself notable. Part 5. The geological evidence. Our investigation led us to consult with experts in seismology and geology to better understand the physical connection between the Mount of Olives and the Golden Gate. Dr. Amos Bean, seismologist at the Geophysical Institute of Israel, provided us with fascinating data. There exists an active fault line that runs precisely from the Mount of Olives toward the structure of the Golden Gate. This fault is part of the Jordan Valley Fault System, which is seismically active. What makes this particularly intriguing is that the prophecy in Zechariah 14:4 specifically describes the Mount of Olives splitting in two. From a geological perspective, there exists a plausible mechanism for this to occur. We've detected an increase in microtremor activity along this fault line in recent years. Dr. Bain continued, "These are very small vibrations, not perceptible to people, but registered by our instruments. The frequency of these microtremors has increased approximately 30% since 2015. When we asked if this could predict a larger seismic event, his response was cautious. Microtremors can be precursors to significant seismic activity, or they can dissipate without consequences. We don't have enough data to make definitive predictions." Additionally, geological analyses have confirmed that the bedrock beneath both the Mount of Olives and the Golden Gate is composed of the same limestone layer. The two sites are geologically connected beneath the surface. Part 6. The impossible physical condition. We hired David Mizrahi, a master stonemason with 40 years of experience in restoring ancient Jerusalem structures, to examine the physical condition of the Golden Gate from the exterior. His assessment was surprising. "I've worked on almost every ancient structure in the Old City. All show signs of deterioration, wind erosion, water damage, settlement cracks. The Golden Gate, which has been exposed to the same elements for centuries, shows a level of preservation that isn't consistent with its age and exposure." Mizrahi specifically pointed out, "The mortar between the stones should have deteriorated significantly after 500 years. However, the joints remain remarkably intact. The limestone, which is porous and susceptible to erosion, shows minimal wear. If I didn't know its documented age, I would estimate this structure is perhaps 150 years old, not 5 centuries. We consulted with other conservation experts who confirmed similar observations, although they admitted having no satisfactory scientific explanation for the structure's exceptional preservation. Part 7. The interfaith convergence. Perhaps the most unusual development in recent years has been the increase in discrete meetings among religious leaders from the 3 major Abrahamic traditions, specifically to discuss the Golden Gate. Rabbi Yehuda Glick, Temple Mount activist, confirmed in an interview, "There have been conversations among leaders from different faith communities. These aren't political negotiations. They're dialogues about prophetic meaning and spiritual preparation. This is unprecedented in my experience." Father Peter Madros, a Catholic priest with long tenure in Jerusalem, told us, "In my 35 years in this city, I've never seen this level of consensus among such diverse religious communities about a specific site. Jews, Christians, and Muslims have very different theological interpretations, but all recognize that something significant is connected with this gate." Sheikh Omar Kiswani, director of the Islamic Waqf Council, at the time of the interview, was more reserved but acknowledged. Bab al-Rahma, the Gate of Mercy, has importance in our tradition as well. There are hadiths that mention this place in the context of the Day of Judgment. It's not just a historical structure for us. Part 8. The Parallel Preparations. During our investigation, we documented several parallel developments that, according to some observers, form part of a broader pattern. The reconstituted Sanhedrin. In 2004, a group of rabbis reconstituted the Sanhedrin, the ancient rabbinic court that hadn't functioned since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. Although controversial and not recognized by all streams of Judaism, the group has been actively preparing for the eventual construction of a third temple. The Temple Vessels. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem has recreated more than 60 ritual implements that would be necessary for temple service. Based on biblical and Talmudic descriptions, these objects are made to exact specifications of materials and dimensions described in ancient texts. The red heifer. In Jewish tradition, the ashes of a completely unblemished red heifer are necessary for the purification ritual before priests can serve in the temple. For centuries, no red heifers meeting the extremely specific requirements described in Numbers 19 were known to exist. In September 2022, 5 red heifers were transported from Texas to Israel, specifically selected for meeting the ritual criteria. These heifers are being cared for under strict rabbinic supervision. If they remain unblemished until reaching the appropriate age, they could be used for the purification ritual. Rabbi Azariah Ariel from the Temple Institute explained to us, for almost 2,000 years, this requirement has been impossible to fulfill. Now, for the first time in the modern era, we have viable candidates. This isn't something we take lightly. It represents a possibility that previous generations could only imagine. Part 9. The Prophetic Calendar. We consulted with several scholars in biblical chronology and prophetic calendars. Although their interpretations vary considerably, we identified several points of interest. The year 2024 marks exactly 1,060 years, 40 jubilees of 49 years, since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. The number 40 has recurring biblical significance as a period of testing or transition. The year 2029 will mark 2,000 years since the crucifixion of Jesus, generally dated around 29 to 33 AD. Some prophecy scholars point out that the 2,000-year period has resonance in various biblical passages and in the interpretation of historical patterns of redemption. Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, an author known for his studies on biblical patterns, noted in an interview, "We're not making date predictions. What we're observing is the convergence of multiple lines of evidence, signs, and preparations that historically hadn't coincided in this manner. That merits serious attention." Part Torah. X. The divergent interpretations. It's crucial to understand that the 3 major religious traditions interpret the meaning of the Golden Gate in fundamentally different ways. Jewish perspective. Jewish tradition teaches that the Messiah will enter Jerusalem through the Golden Gate. This will be the Messiah ben David, who will restore the kingdom of Israel, rebuild the temple, and bring an era of world peace. For most Jews, this will be the first and only messianic fulfillment. Christian perspective. Christians believe that Jesus of Nazareth was and is the Messiah, and that his entry into Jerusalem 2,000 years ago partially fulfilled the messianic prophecies. His return through the Golden Gate will be his second coming, establishing the kingdom of God in a complete and final manner. Islamic perspective. In Islamic eschatology, Bab al-Rahma, the Gate of Mercy, is associated with events of the Day of Judgment. Some traditions mention that Isa, Jesus, considered a prophet in Islam, will descend near Jerusalem in the last times, although the Islamic understanding of this event differs significantly from the Christian one. Dr. David Flusser, scholar in comparative religions from Hebrew University, offered us this perspective. What's extraordinary isn't that three traditions have different interpretations of the same site. What's extraordinary is that all three traditions, independently, assign supreme eschatological importance to the same physical threshold. This convergence on a specific geographical point is unique in comparative religious studies. Part Yasin, the skeptical analysis. To maintain investigative balance, we also consulted with skeptical experts who offer alternative explanations for the reported phenomena. Dr. Nathan Rosenberg, psychologist specializing in religious experiences, suggests when people have strong prophetic expectations, they can interpret ordinary events as extraordinary. The phenomenon of expectation confirmation can make ordinary light seem supernatural, coincidences seem like miracles, and common technical failures seem like divine intervention. Sarah Goldman, secular historian of religions, argues, history is full of moments when religious communities believed they were living in the end times. Early Christians expected Jesus' return in their generation. Every period of crisis generates apocalyptic speculation. Most of these predictions don't materialize. Regarding the failed attempts to alter the gate, military historian Joseph Klein offers, when we examine these events carefully, most have mundane explanations. Demolitions stop due to political changes. Equipment fails for technical reasons. Plans are canceled for practical considerations. Retrospectively, people tend to reinterpret these events as miraculous. However, even skeptics admit that some aspects of the pattern are difficult to fully explain. As Goldman said, the consistency of the pattern across so many different contexts is unusual. I acknowledge that some correlations are difficult to attribute entirely to coincidence, although I personally don't accept supernatural explanations. Part 2. The geopolitical implications. The Golden Gate doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's situated in one of the most disputed and politically sensitive places on the planet. Any activity related to the Temple Mount has potential massive geopolitical ramifications. Professor Moshe Halbertal, expert in religious conflicts, warned us. The Temple Mount is the most sensitive trigger in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Any action perceived as a change in the status quo can trigger violence. Even rumors about the Golden Gate have the potential to create riots. In 2000, Ariel Sharon's visit to the Temple Mount is frequently cited as one of the catalysts of the Second Intifada. The opening or alteration of the Golden Gate would have a much greater symbolic impact. Israeli governments, regardless of their political orientation, have been extremely cautious about the Temple Mount, explained Dr. Dalia Gavrieli-Nouri, political analyst. They understand that religious implications cannot be separated from national security implications. The official silence about reports related to the Golden Gate likely reflects this understanding. Conclusion: the unanswered questions. After months of investigation, interviews with dozens of witnesses, consultations with experts in multiple disciplines, and examination of historical documents and contemporary evidence, we arrive at an inevitable conclusion. There are more questions than answers. What we can affirm with certainty: the Golden Gate has remained sealed for 5 centuries, an extraordinarily long period of preservation for any structure in Jerusalem. there exists a documented pattern of attempts to alter the gate that have been interrupted, although the causes of these interruptions are interpreted differently by different observers. In 2019, unusual events occurred around the gate that multiple independent witnesses reported, although physical evidence is limited and authorities haven't offered official explanations. There exists measurable increased seismic activity along the fault line, connecting the Mount of Olives with the location of the Golden Gate. Multiple preparations related to prophetic expectations are occurring simultaneously in Jerusalem, a phenomenon unprecedented in modern history. Leaders from 3 different religious traditions are having unprecedented dialogues about the prophetic significance of this specific gate. What remains in dispute is the interpretation of these facts. For believers of different traditions, these events represent signs of imminent prophetic fulfillment. For skeptics, they represent the persistence of religious beliefs that reinterpret ordinary events through supernatural lenses. What makes the Golden Gate unique among sites of religious significance is that, unlike most prophecies that are ambiguous or metaphorical, this involves a specific and verifiable physical structure. It's a point where faith and history, heaven and earth, spiritual interpretation and material reality converge in tangible ways. The gate remains sealed, but after 5 centuries of silence, multiple lines of evidence suggest that something is changing. Whether that change is the beginning of prophetic fulfillment or simply another chapter in the long history of apocalyptic expectations that have characterized Jerusalem for millennia, is a question that only time, or perhaps eternity, can answer. For now, the Golden Gate guards its secrets, waiting as it has waited for 500 years, while the world watches, wonders, and in some cases, prays for what may come.